One way to look at the job of helping autistic kids is to see it as a matter of constructing a person. You have the raw materials, but you have to build a person. Ivar Lovaas, the father of ABA, applied behavior analysis is usually the first go-to treatment for an autistic individual, but that does not necessarily mean it is the best. If you are unaware of the horrifying origins of ABA therapy, please go watch this video about it, or this video, or this video. I don't have time to get into the history, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't go ahead and learn about that for yourself. I'm just doing this for time's sakes. I am going to speak personally about my time as an RBT and when I started to question ABA and its ethics. If you don't know what a behavior tech / RBT is, it is a person who works one-on-one with an autistic individual and uses the behavior plan given to them by the behavior analyst, who usually has their masters. They implement that plan with the autistic individual, and usually that plan has things such as working on fine motor skills, gross motor skills, just overall communication ability, socializations, etc. First thing, locking kids in rooms. Place A I worked at had this older child who we're gonna say was around 8 years old. Really good kid, real funny kid. Most of his behaviors involved attention seeking, and so sometimes he would just say hi overly repeatedly and repeatedly and repeatedly and repeatedly, to the point where some people might find annoying. And what we were told to do was to lock this child in a room no bigger than a walk-in closet. It had one of those doors you see at schools with a little window in it, but that was it. We were to put him in there, stand outside the door, and wait until this child stops that behavior. And eventually the child would become aggressive, because who wouldn't? When you're locked inside a walk-in closet, if it's not filled with Prada, I don't want to be locked in it. You could hear them scream and start banging on the walls, and it was just so normalized. I mean, they weren't alone. Their tech was right outside the door, but it was just so strange to me how when I saw this, it was just a normal thing, and you were instructed not to give it any attention whatsoever. I don't think that behavior called for locking this child in a room. This felt archaic. Like, this was something you were supposed to read about that they do back then in like old, like 1940s, 1930s psych wards, not current day. And adding on to that, physical restraints. Physical restraints are weird. Numero dos, loss of autonomy. Although it is very common for a lot of autistic individuals not to like touch, it is more than common to use full physical promptings inside of ABA. And if you don't know what prompting is gestures, demonstrations, touches, or full physical prompting. Other things that are arranged to increase the likelihood that children will make the correct response. And usually it goes from the least intrusive prompting to the most intrusive prompting, which would be full physical prompting. That is hand over hand, I'm moving you like this. And then least prompting would be simple verbal commands. Then you'd move on to gestural, and then partially touching, and then full physical prompting. But it's not uncommon to see full physical prompting. It's not uncommon for a behavior analyst to be like, actually we have to do physical prompting first. That will be like the thing we start off with. We're not even gonna try these least intrusive ones. We will need full physical prompting with this. Full physical prompting could be simply putting your hand over someone else's hand in order to grab the right object, or it could be grabbing a kid and dragging them to you so they learn to come here. there are certain circumstances where I understand full physical prompting will be needed. Like if a kid is running into traffic and you need to grab them, or maybe the kid's being aggressive towards others and you have to block their advances and try to calm them down however you see. The worst one I've seen is this. Someone will say the instructions, look at me, and then they will grab the kid's face and turn their face so the child is looking at them. Who would not get annoyed with that? Who wouldn't hate that? If you did that to me, I don't know. I don't know how I'd feel about that. Maybe I'd blush. Who knows? We'll see. We shouldn't be teaching kids that just anyone can grab onto their body and they're just supposed to let that happen. These are not puppets. These are living people. Side tangent, teaching them to blindly follow instructions given to them by older, larger individuals could lead to some dangerous situations. Ultra side tangent, bathrooms. I've heard this in a few videos talking about how some places do not give privacy to autistic individuals when they relieve themselves. If the person can go by themselves without issue, without need of assistance of any sort, of course they should have privacy. Every human has the right to privacy. I've seen people eat their shit. I've seen people play in the toilet bowl like it was a pond and they were looking for fishies. I've seen people straight up just decide they would pee everywhere else besides the toilet, which is not an autistic problem, it's a man problem, okay? I've seen a lot of weird things in restrooms where maybe someone should be closer to them than further than them. I don't think they need to be inside the restroom with them unless they're assisting them wipe because they cannot wipe themselves. That's different. Main point, yes, privacy while relieving yourselves. Third one, appropriate play. I know I talked about a behavior plan earlier in the video, and one of the targets of most behavior plans are appropriate play. Now, the definition of appropriate play is nothing, because what the f does that even mean? Play means to have fun. Play means to have a good time. Play means to enjoy yourself. So how does one appropriately enjoy themselves? Why are we giving instructions for how someone should find joy? It was my very first day on the job. I was new. I was getting trained on this child, and this child had a little piano toy. And I was with my instructor, and they were teaching me, the ropes. This child decided to bang the piano toy on the table and was having a blast. Was giggling, was smiling, was looking up everywhere. And the tech who was training me quickly said, "Stop that, that's not right." Switched his piano toy up and taught him how to play it properly and how he should be playing with this piano toy. And I just kind of thought that was a little strange, because to me that was play. To me, that child was having fun and enjoying themselves. I saw nothing wrong with that. So what was going on? And this example is cliche, but it happened, and I just thought to myself, that is too perfect. We were coloring with some kids, and one of the kids was not coloring the sky the correct color. They were coloring it green, which, if you don't know, green is not a creative color. So the child was told to color it blue and that they should color inside the lines. And I just thought to myself, that's a little cliche. That's a little cliche. Like, the kid's enjoying themselves. They're having fun. At this time, this kid was supposed to be at play. They were supposed to be having fun. And I'm sure they were more than happy to be coloring their sky green. But instead of allowing to have fun, they were meant to feel like they were wrong. I joked about it, but it literally felt like that scene from Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, where the little yellow puppet is like talking to the notepad, and the notepad's like, green is not a creative color, where it is really controlling on what is creativity and what it could look like. Which is like, oh my god, is that a little yellow puppet? Don't hug me, I'm scared autistic? Maybe. Who knows? You never know. Chapter blah, blah, blah. The abuse and neglect of autistic kids. I saved this chapter for last because I didn't know where to fit it in. I wanted to use my experiences as an RBT in order to highlight some of the things I find wrong with ABA today. This part, think of it as like a little mini essay in the middle. The abuse and neglect of autistic kids. Like, I can't. Some of these parents are up there with like family vloggers of how bad it was. And like, I'm talking about parents who could not give their child the time of day. Parents who pick them up, put them in the room and throw a tablet in there and feed them and do just enough to make sure their kid is alive. I worked with this little black girl. She was adopted by white parents, which is already like a, what are you doing? What are you doing, silly little goose? Wealthy parents. Wealthy parents. I'm talking to you that this child got picked up more by the maids than they ever did their parent. A lot of autistic people have very picky diets. This little girl was one of those people who only liked certain foods. And of course, the clinic I worked with offered food at the time, so we would always try to give her something so that she could eat something because she never came with lunch. But she would also never eat any of the food the school could provide. So, but any time we saw that they liked a certain food, we were sure to grab as much as the food the school had and give it to them. Because if not, they'd be so hungry that they would scavenge our trash can to see if they could find food. I understand dealing with a picky eater is hard, but when they are your child, you learn what they can eat and you pack it for them. You pack it for them and you send it for them because you are a parent. The least you could do is make sure your child is fed properly. She would get so ashy that she would scratch herself, and she'd scratch herself way too hard that she bled. Fun fact, a lot of autistic individuals hate the sensation of bandages, and she was one of them. So we would just have to hold napkins on it until it stopped. The back of her ears were dirty. It was like no one ever bothered to clean them properly. This kid wasn't physically aggressive. They weren't climbing on walls. They were quiet. They were quiet and would sometimes cry for a while for what seemed like everyone no apparent reason. That was the worst of it to their extent that I could think would bother a parent. One of our kids who would cry, hit, throw tantrums, all the above, was the smartest little kid, but you never wouldn't know because his mouth couldn't find the right shape to say the words. Had parents that were more happy to drop this kid off early and pick them up the latest they could, the kid would be sick and the parents would still send them in. The kid never had a day off, nothing early, not even for the holidays. If the person working with the kid can tell you do not care, for sure the child will pick that up as well. There was a lot more I could have added to that, but I think that's enough. I've also seen some great parents. Some great parents who are doing their absolute darn best to be there for their child, who are willing to try almost anything and everything, from the weirdest of food diets to stem cells, which, by the way, none of this I can't disprove because we aren't able to disprove things yet. Always making sure they're involved with their child's life and making sure that in the end they just get to have a good childhood. These parents were great. And they're parents who are always searching for answers. How to help my autistic child be able to communicate more, how to help my autistic child in order to socialize, how to help my autistic child, how to help autism, what is autism, how to cure autism. What if there's not supposed to be a cure? Chapter 6, Neurodiversity. A movement that has grown in popularity and in size is the neurodiverse community, where they believe autistic people want understanding and money. People on the autism spectrum do not need no saving. They don't need no cure. They definitely don't need whatever the fuck this shit mountain is right here. They want a world that doesn't reject them everywhere. A world they can be a part of. The question is, do I think ABA is good or not? And my answer is, I don't see ABA being the future with autism. The only salvageable parts of it I could see would be speech and life skills, but those things are not exclusive to ABA and can exist outside of them. There are some people who claim that they've had wonderful and great experiences with ABA, and that's awesome. I think the next big thing we're gonna see is a societal change of how we view autism, of how we view different ways of thinking. I think that's the future we are more likely to see than the growth of ABA. Eventually, I think it will crumble under its shaky foundations. Did we become so egotistical with our ego-testicles? Who are we to say that our way of thinking is the only correct one? That's the video. That's it. What you doing? Get out of here. Get. Later, stranger.